Welcome to Your Voice Dorset podcast. I'm Luke, and today I'm joined by David Sidwick, Dorset's Police and Crime Commissioner. Hi, David.
Hi, Luke.
The first thing I'd like to ask, and I think an important question for some of our listeners especially, what does the PCC, the Police Crime Commissioner, actually do?
Very good question. It's probably one of the least explained jobs on the planet. And it's something that at every residents meeting I do, the first couple of slides is exactly that. What is the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner? I spent 3 years figuring it out before I became PCC. So it boils down for me to three main things. One is I have to make certain that we have an efficient and effective police force. That largely comes down to money. And we might get into that a little bit later on, but it's making certain that the funding streams are there in order to finance the force. It's making certain that the force actually uses the money effectively. The second thing is I have a small amount of commissioning budget. So the clue's in the title, Police and Crime Commissioner. And so the commissioner bit is I've got a little bit of money which I can use for making a difference. And I choose to use it for victim support. Every victim in Dorset who suffers from a crime, we will basically support that. I use it for crime prevention. So, for example, we have something called the Operation Relentless Community Fund, which looks at reducing antisocial behaviour across the county. And we bring that back every year, and people can pitch for money in order to affect their locality. And then the third one is reducing reoffending. So that's where the money goes that I've got. But the main part of the job, and the reason why it's an elected position, is it is about holding Dorset Police to account for the people of Dorset. So you and everybody else in Dorset are my boss. And so that's why when I was a candidate, I spent 3 years, and those 3 years were researching what the job was about, but it was also about finding out what the people of Dorset wanted. And so after numerous surveys, numerous presentations and feedback received, they became manifesto promises, what the people wanted. And then they became priorities in what's called the Police and Crime Plan. And so the Chief Constable has to basically follow the Police and Crime Plan, which has been put together. And in my case, I wanted it to be very clearly a golden thread between what the people wanted, my promises to them, the priorities we have, and the operational vision for the force, so that everything's united so that we get delivery. And that's what we've got. So I could talk about the Police and Crime Plan if you want me to.
Yeah, give me a bit of detail. So when you were elected, and one of the things you came up with was a 10-point plan, basically, in effect.
6-point plan.
6-point plan.
So the first thing was to have an overall vision. Now, we were a safe county from the point of view, if you compared us to other places, we were 11th or 10th safest area in the country. But I wanted us to go further. I wanted us to strive to be the safest area. And so that was the overarching vision. And then how were we going to get there? We were going to get there with a number of priorities. Number one was to cut crime and antisocial behaviour. And that covers what a lot of people really care about, which is the high volume, and I hate using this term, but possibly it's not the violent crime. It is things like antisocial behaviour. It is things like shoplifting. It is things like road safety. So those were the aspects in the first priority, to cut crime and antisocial behaviour. The second priority was to make the police more visible, connected and engaged. If there was one common thread for every community that I spoke to, whether it was the people of Bournemouth, the diverse communities there, or whether it was the people of Langton Herring, one of the smallest villages in Dorset, the same thing came through. They wanted to see more of their police. So that connectivity and visibility is something that I am very clear, and it's cool. It's my priority too, and it's something that I am holding the force to account to try and deliver more and more and more of it. Priority 3 is the one where we get the sleepless nights. This is to fight violence and high harm. So this covers issues like child abuse, modern slavery, violence against women and girls, knife crime, and a large one for me is what underpins a lot of these things, which is the issue of addictions and drugs in our society. So that's priority 3. Priority 4 is fighting rural crime. When I came into office, we had 1 PC and 1 PCSO, I think it was. And stop me, Luke, but I think we have a pretty rural county outside of the couple of the common conurbations. Wasn't fit for purpose, so we changed that in order to fight rural crime, which is serious and it's organised, and it needed a proper response to it, which we now have. And then the last 2 priorities are overarching. One is to put victims and communities first, and the other one is to make every penny count for Dorset, which refers to the good use of our money, if you like. So that's what the priorities are and what they mean.
Incredible. You mentioned that the Police and Crime Commission role is an elected position, it's a political position. How did you get into politics? And what's kind of your have you always been involved in policing? What was your background?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just a normal chap from Bournemouth. What happened was my career was in the pharmaceutical industry. In the year 2000, I was on the UK board of a large multinational pharmaceutical company. They were taken over by somebody else. I didn't fancy going to New York, which was the offer on the table. So I started my own company in the centre of Bournemouth, which is a medical education company largely. I was doing that in 2018. We'd done it for 17 years. It was a successful company. I'd probably still be doing it if something hadn't got inside me, which was I started getting grumpy about policing. Antisocial behaviour was always in the local paper. Nobody seemed to be talking about it from the police end. Nobody seemed to be coming up with solutions. There was a shoplifting incident at the end of my high street, which I happened to get involved in. And I was a bit concerned that I'd reached my high street. There was the idea of merging with Devon and Cornwall Police, and I couldn't get any good answers about that merger and what it would deliver for the people, because that is the lens which everything needs to be seen through. So I was moaning about these things. My wife is from North Yorkshire. She told me in no uncertain terms, stop moaning, do something about it. So she went back to work. I closed the company and it should have been 2 years, but I did 3 years researching this. And that was talking to the people of Dorset, but it was also going out with other police forces, other police and crime commissioners to understand how the job was done, because it is done in lots of different ways, in lots of different places. And there's no degree course, there's no training for it. So I wanted to understand, because if you're going to try and do something, I think you've got to try and make it the best you possibly can be. So that's what happened. And I put myself forward for election, and the good people of Dorset said yes, and thank you to them for that. And when it came to the re-election in 2024, again, they wanted me to carry on. I'm very thankful for that. I'm very clear that I have a mandate until 2028, and I need to deliver on the police and crime plan. Progress against that is good. We are, for example, now the 5th safest area. We have dropped antisocial behaviour, the lowest that it's been in 16 years. We have an effective rural crime team, which are dropping rural crime. And if I pick on one of the more violent measures, knife offences, we are the 2nd lowest in the country with a 19% drop compared to last year. So I'm very clear this police and crime plan is working. We're just going to keep on delivering it.
These statistics are great, and they're clearly evidence that Dorset is a safe area. But looking online from the feedback we get as a media organisation, there is a sense people don't feel safe. And I've never understood this difference. Do you think you've got any answer? Why do people perhaps not feel safe in areas like Bournemouth or Poole or parts of Dorset?
Well, there's a number of reasons. One is and I push Dorset Police on this all the time. One of the reasons is policing does not generally communicate well enough and put out the good news about what they're doing. That's one factor. A second factor is that when you are in an urban conurbation, it's not just the policing which makes you feel safe or unsafe. It's other factors. For example, is the CCTV working? Is the foliage cut back? Are the street lights working? It's those things as well. So that the no broken windows approach, which was used in New York, is one that I'm very keen on. So you need that as well. And also there's a third element which comes into play, which is even when good things are communicated, sometimes the press picks on a headline which says a bad thing. And people, all of us, we have limited attention spans, we have busy lives. If you see a headline which says, for example, I will use one, murder rate increased by 300%. What that headline doesn't tell you, as I just did earlier, is that knife crime is down by 19%, and the murder rate they're talking about is 6 instead of 2. And I have to say, if you look across time in Dorset, 6 or 7 is the average. So it's how it's portrayed as well. I will take exception with the press, particularly the national press. We had a situation not so very long ago where one national newspaper said 300 stabbings in the centre of Bournemouth. It was 300 knife offences, not stabbings, across the whole of Dorset. So there is also this issue of getting it right. So there's a number of factors we've got to do. But having said all that, I want more visibility from Dorset Police. Now, that's a double-edged sword. In some places, when particularly young people see police officers, they wonder what's going on. And so that may actually make you feel less safe if you see a lot of police officers around. For a lot of our residents, they like to see police officers around because it reminds them of the days when we were able to put police officers on the beat. So that visibility factor to me is really, really important. And that's why I'm striving to get the force to do more in that regard. So you are absolutely right. It is a frustration to me that no matter how good we seem to get, we can't move the dial on that perception. And so I'm really grateful for you to give me the opportunity to come and talk today.
And I hope as a part of the press, I'm not misrepresenting anything. We've been quite fair.
Absolutely not.
But no, I think it is an interesting point of like feeling safe versus like statistically it is a safe area. But what are some of the other challenges that Dorset Police are dealing with? What are the biggest sort of crime issues in the area that you're tackling?
Well, one of the biggest is always antisocial behaviour. When I was a candidate, I figured out what people wanted from surveys. We've continued with the same questions since I've been in office to check that they're the same. When you ask the people of Dorset, it's antisocial behaviour, it is burglaries, it is drug dealing, it is rural crime. So those are the four main ones. That is, if you ask them the question, what are you worried about where you live? If you ask a more general question, then they will bring in what they see a lot more in the press, on the telly and all the rest of it, which is issues like knife crime, etc. So that's what we're trying to address. I'm very clear that we have to deliver. When I say we, I'm talking about Dorset Police and my office. We have to deliver for the people. That's the whole point of this. So what matters to them matters to me. That makes sense?
Absolutely. So those are kind of the crime areas that are a big issue. Another area that you're quite concerned about is how Dorset Police is funded and the finances of Dorset Police. Is that something you'd like to talk about?
Yes, and I will try and stay fairly measured. But this is to my mind one of the big injustices which is happening. So how funding occurs for a police force is it comes in two ways. It comes through the core grant, and that is from central government, and that is decided according to a national funding formula. Now, that was set up literally decades ago now, and it was set up to help metropolitan areas, as far as I can tell. One of its factors, for example, is the density of pubs. Well, that's great if you're in the centre of Birmingham or the centre of London. It doesn't help much if you're on the road between Dorchester and Sherborne. It doesn't take into account two things. It doesn't take into account rurality. The 10 lowest forces funded in the country are all rural forces. It also, in our case, we've got a double whammy because we've got something else, which is, you may have noticed there's a few visitors who come to Dorset in the summer. We don't get a penny to police those visitors. So when our population doubles or trebles, we don't get any money to basically do the policing there. And what this means is as we are the lowest funded force in the country by head of population, what that then means is the burden falls on two groups of people. One group of people, which is us, the taxpayer locally through the council tax. So we pay something like 52% of our force. Other forces around the country vary between 20% and the average, I think, is 34%. That's not right. And the other group of people it falls on is Dorset Police. Dorset Police in the summer regularly have to do overtime, 12-hour days, lose rest days in order to police and keep us safe. Now, this isn't right. And I have been badgering government ever since I became Police and Crime Commissioner. In the first term, we won the argument about rurality and seasonality. A new funding formula was put together, but it has never been enacted or consulted on. And I am trying to force the government to do that because that is the structural deficit which prevents Dorset Police from getting even better still. And it prevents us doing the prevention piece, which I'm so keen on, in order to lower things like drugs in our society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, I am grumpy about funding.
Something else I'm sure you're slightly grumpy about was Labour's decision last year to scrap the PCC role from, I think, 2028, 29, I can't remember which year.
So it's 2028. So the first thing I'll say to the people of Dorset is, you elected me. You said you wanted me to do this thing. I will do it until the end because that's what you deserve. The second thing I'll say is, am I grumpy? Personally, I hadn't made a decision if I was going to do a third term. So personally, I'm not as grumpy as I could have been. For the people, I'm extremely grumpy. There's two reasons for that. Number one, there is no evidence base for this decision. If they could show us the evidence, for example, that mayoral areas are better at reducing crime than PCC areas, I would hold my hand up and say that's the way to go. But this is nothing but political ideology. What they've said is we'll go back to something which we're not quite certain what it is yet. We are still waiting for the detail. But it'll be something like a local committee. Now, there is a local committee, for example, which scrutinises me. It's a police and crime panel, a combination of local councillors. And that's what they're suggesting going forward. But forgive me, that scrutinises me once a quarter. I sit down with Dorset Police, the Chief Constable, once a week. My team are in lots and lots of committees, elements of what the force is doing, the whole time. None of that need for that job will go away. So there is a huge amount of detail that hasn't been landed. And I will be fighting to make certain that Dorset gets good police governance. Otherwise, we will go back to possibly the days when it is decided by the Chief Constable according to what they want, or worse still, what the Home Secretary wants. And that will be the politicisation of police force, far beyond anything which may have been accused of police and crime commissioners.
I guess that's kind of an interesting question to ask, is around the role of the PCC, where this kind of criticism come from, that, or why they don't, why is the need to get rid of it, perhaps? Like you say, there's not been clear how police oversight will happen after the role is gone, or have there been underperforming PCC in other areas that you think could have done something different, or what are some of the criticisms that people seem to have with the PCC?
Well, the criticism levelled at us by the government was that we weren't visible enough. But forgive me, what they did, well, there's two factors to that. First factor is we're a new political entity. We were only invented in 2012. If you use the same time period and ask the local populace what they thought of their MPs less than 20 years after MPs came in, I'm certain you would have got the same answer. So that's one point. The second point is that survey was done in 2020. Well, stop me and buy one. I didn't become Police and Crime Commissioner until 2021. I've been very clear on what my responsibilities are there for the people of Dorset. And therefore, when you see me in the press like this, it is rare I talk about anything other than something which affects the people of Dorset. Now, that is what a Police and Crime Commissioner should be doing. It should be about their patch. Now, maybe some of the others have not done it the same way as I have. Maybe older ones weren't visible, but I'm very clear that I hope I am more visible to explain what the police are doing and to make certain I hold them accountable on behalf of the people. So actually, if the government had any real brain power, they would redo that survey and then base their decisions on that. And they would also look at the ONS data, the crime rate data. So my crime rate is the 5th lowest in the country. If I look at the 10 lowest in the country, I think only one of those is a mayoral area, which is a relatively new mayoral area. Do you see what I mean? Mm. There isn't an evidence base for this. And that to me is a problem.
Absolutely. Well, as you say, given you've got until 2028 still in the role, what are your priorities going forward? Is it to focus on the funding or?
Well, I'm going to keep focusing on the funding because that's the right thing to do. I have a letter into the Home Secretary, which the MPs in Dorset, every single one of them, 7 of them signed it with me. 1 put in their own private letter. So all agreeing with this issue. I'm waiting to have the answer to that, and I'm slightly grumpy. It's taken since November to come back to me. But I will keep fighting. And there are other things that I will do in order to try and change the funding formula for us. But I'm very clear. The main focus for me is to continue to deliver on the police and crime plan. Because it's worked and we've seen the results we've got to keep delivering on that. And the oil tanker, the one that I really want to do better at is the one around visibility and connectivity. We're making progress on that. We've improved our 999 contact. 3 years ago, it was running at about 75% were answered within 10 seconds. We're now well above 90% regularly. So we need to do that with the secondary call handling of 101. We need to do that from the point of view of having more visible police around. And we've moved that by having community contact points and mobile police stations. So bringing the police to the people.
Absolutely. In your tenure since 2018, how has policing changed in Dorset, and perhaps more generally in the UK? How do you think policing is changing?
I think there's a couple of things. I think policing has changed out of all recognition compared to probably 20, 30, 40 years ago. We have much more online criminality. And that's a factor in the ability to be more visible, actually, because people think largely in terms of policing on the streets. But actually what we've had is we've got a significant increase in child sexual abuse online. So we need officers sitting in a room to try and catch these paedophiles who are basically exploiting and hurting our kids. Domestic violence. Years ago, that didn't used to be addressed. It was a private thing, or it was only addressed when it happened in a pub. Now, domestic violence is 20 to 30% of the neighbourhood policing team's time is dealing with that. So what we're seeing is more and more online involvement in criminality. Fraud is an obvious example. We now have all sorts of different sorts of fraud. We are soon to be at Valentine's Day, so make certain you've got your cards. But we've got online romance fraud now, where somebody will pretend to be somebody else to form a relationship to try and get money out of them. I mean, this criminality wasn't there, and now it is. So there is much more technical work happening around that. I think also sometimes policing can become more social work than police. I tried to rack that back. I was very clear I wanted Dorset Police to be crime fighters. So an example that we had is we had a lot of other things happening. I'll give you one example. We had a lady who fell in the street and broke her hip. And for 16 hours, there was 2 police officers with her. Now, that's not useful. I want those police officers catching criminals and preventing crime. But they were having to do that. So we now have something in Dorset called Right Care, Right Person, which has come in. We've just finished all 4 phases of it. And that should help with that to make certain that the right person is giving the care to those individuals. Mental health was a big part of what we were trying to achieve here. And we've done that with our partners. We believe that's the right thing to do. So that was another change that has happened. I suppose you're asking about changes. I suppose the priorities in themselves have driven change. Antisocial behaviour wasn't a priority for Dorset Police before I came in. It is now. And that's a contribution factor to the reduction. Rural crime is the other one. Rural crime is serious. If a tractor's pinched, that's a serious crime group. They've got to get it to the channel. They've got to get it across the channel. That's serious crime groups talking to serious crime groups. You could say the same thing, for example, around hair coursing. Hair coursing is also serious crime. There was a hair coursing cup for £50,000 offered. The dogs themselves can be thousands and thousands of pounds. It's because it is sometimes about the gambling involved, and they have a laptop set up which is projecting the sport across the world for gambling. So that wasn't being addressed. So we went from our 1 or 2 people in the rural crime team to 17 in the rural crime team. And we've also now got rural mounted volunteers, kind of a rural neighbourhood watch, but able to be directed by the police, who are also helping across Dorset. So, yeah, there are some significant changes which have occurred.
Dorset Police often works with like neighbouring police forces and across the southwest. How closely do you work with other PCCs in the area, and how does that affect policing in the area?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it was one of the things that after the first election in 2021, we got together as PCCs, the 5 of us in the southwest, and we said that we wanted to make changes. And the first one that we did was we got together was Operation Scorpion. So that is the southwest operation to basically make the southwest hostile to drug dealers and also to try and address antisocial drug taking. We're now on, I think, our 13th iteration of that. That has taken a lot of drugs off the streets. It's taken a lot of weapons off the streets. It's safeguarded a lot of people. Excuse me. The second one that we've gone further with is something called Operation Ragwort. That's where we share intelligence from our rural communities around serious organised crime. So that, again, is where the 5 forces come together. In a different way, we have quarterly collaborative meetings, the Southwest Collaboration, where we talk about how we can make the funding go further. So, for example, we can talk about collaborations. We all collaborate on forensics. That goes into a pot. So we have one forensics, which deals with all of us, just about. I think Gloucester probably aren't part of that, but the majority of us are in it. So that's what we're trying to do, because the more that we can do regionally to make the money go further, the better it is. So we have a very close relationship between the 5 PCCs and indeed between the 5 forces. If I use rural crime as an example, I went to see each of the other PCCs, either just on their patch or on our patch, who were neighbouring to us, to make certain that our cross-border communication was really up to snuff. And I'm doing that again. Donna, who is the PCC for Hampshire, and I will be holding a cross-border meeting on rural crime in order to make certain that we are as good as we can be across the Hampshire-Dorset border. So this work's ongoing. We talk all the time. We're really quite good chums, the PCCs in the Southwest.
Good to hear. So important, like I say, for that collaboration work. Going back to something we talked about earlier about safety and people feeling safe.
Yep.
Some people try and feel safe by joining like neighbourhood watches. In Bournemouth last year, something started called the Safeguard Force. I wonder if you wanted to share any thoughts on the Safeguard Force.
Well, look, I'm very keen on volunteers. We have some great volunteers. We have police specials, for example, and we have police service volunteers. We have lots of volunteers as part of the police force. I would love people to join that. We've got a recruitment exercise occurring at the moment. The concerns which have been expressed by Dorset Police, which I share, is if you have a group of people who are purporting to kind of do the police's job, well, you need to have all the constructs around those people that you have with the police. You have to make certain they're vetted properly. You have to have policies. You have to have protocols. So what I don't understand is why those individuals haven't joined the specials or volunteers with the police, because we'd be really grateful for that. So I think that's as far as I want to go on that, Luke. But that's where I am with that, is I don't understand why they wouldn't join in with us, if you see what I mean.
My last question then is to ask if people would like to get involved in policing or volunteering, how can they go about that?
Please look on the police website. We are actively looking for specials at the moment. So that would be brilliant. And I'm really happy if we have more specials and more volunteers. You can make a really big difference to helping to keep Dorset safe.
There's one thing we ask all our guests, and that is, what does Dorset mean to you? It's a nice light-hearted way to end the conversation after I'm talking about rural crime and all these big issues. What does Dorset mean to you, David?
Look, it's kind of everything. I was born in Bournemouth. I stayed in Bournemouth for 62 years before I moved to Dorchester. I think it is the best county in the UK. God's own country, although my wife's from Yorkshire, so I have to be a bit careful. I think it is firstly beautiful. I think it's the most beautiful county. I think we've got everything we could possibly want here. We've got the beach, we've got the rural countryside, we've got wonderful, vibrant communities, and we've got a diversity which we're proud of. We've got a tolerance as well. It's one of the most tolerant places. I think you would go a long way to find anywhere better. I don't know of anywhere better in the UK or indeed the world.
Incredible. Thank you very much for your time today, David, and thank you very much for listening.